The group in Georgia accused of creating a modern-day slavery operation charged with luring migrants from Mexico, Guatemala, and Honduras with temporary visas and then making them work for pennies. 2 workers dying after allegedly being forced to work in harsh conditions. NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hillyard tonight with the latest on that investigation.
Prosecutors calling it modern-day slavery in the fields of southern Georgia. Years worth of damning, horrific allegations. A new 54-page indictment by the U.S. Department of Justice, charging 24 individuals as part of what it calls Operation Blooming Onion. Prosecutors say the defendants defrauded the U.S.'s H-2A guest farm worker visa program. When many of those would-be farm workers arrived to the U.S., the indictment alleges they were abused and exploited.
A group of people in the U.S. has sold the American dream, kept them in deplorable conditions, held their documents, forced them to work for little or no pay, and systematically abused them.
All at the hands of what the DOJ is calling a transnational criminal organization, referred to as Patricio TCO, in operation since at least 2015. Victims allegedly forced to live in cramped, dirty trailers with raw sewage leaking into the trailers, threatened them with deportation, and detained them in a work camp surrounded by an electric fence. And in 2018, 30 individuals allegedly sold to another man in Indiana for $21,481.
What makes these H-2A workers susceptible to abuse?
They depend on the employer for their transportation, their food, their housing, their wages, whether they go to get medical help. The workers cannot complain because if they complain, they'll lose their jobs.
The acting U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Georgia, David Estes, stating, Operation Blooming Onion frees more than 100 individuals from the shackles of modern-day slavery and will hold accountable those who put them in chains. In addition to the charges, grim allegations. One individual, identified as victim number 12, repeatedly raped by a member of the criminal ring. But in 2019, one worker allegedly died from a heat stroke when he was outside working in the fields. And in 2020, another worker allegedly died when he was cleaning a Patricio TCO labor camp that did not have air conditioning. This indictment documents 66 victims, but the U.S. Attorney's Office says they are looking to account for more.
How critical are these workers for Georgia's economy?
Last year, we came in at just over 27,000 H-2A workers in Georgia. The obligation an employer has to an H-2A worker is no different than they have to a domestic worker.
An NBC News investigations team last year visited more than a dozen H-2A sites, including in Georgia,
no hubo paga para nosotros,
where violations were found to be prevalent. The Department of Labor in 2019 documenting about 12,000 violations by employers across the country under the H-2A visa program. This man, not related to Operation Blooming Onion, sharing his story.
Esa casa donde vivíamos estaba muy vieja, tenía arañas, tenía cucarachas, el baño no servía, estaba muy cochina, muy sucia que estaba la casa.
The conditions and the things that were described in these indictments are not surprising to us, not unusual.
So is it a matter of whether the U.S. puts the resources behind to go in and investigate and charge for these types of conditions?
It is. It is whether the U.S. government puts money and effort into checking workplace sites and really making sure that H-2A guest workers are taken care of and not exploited.
All right, Vaughn Hillyard joins us now from New York. And Vaughn, you just said there that there might be other groups like this, but what is the government doing to ensure workers with H-2A visas are not being abused?
Tom, the head of the Department of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, he said that under this Biden administration, they want to shift their resources to going after these sort of exploitive bosses. Instead, when you saw it under the Trump administration, there was the targeting of these massive workplace raids in which hundreds of undocumented individuals would be arrested. But what you see here, there, for example, are more than 200,000 H-2A workers here that are guest workers every single year. And what you see from these these indictments of these 24 individuals are hundreds of workers here who essentially were not granted the rights granted to them through this visa worker program. We're talking about individuals who were living surrounded by sewage, individuals who had guns to their heads while working, individuals who were picking onions and only getting paid for 20 cents for every bucket that they picked. These were the types of conditions that the government under the Biden administration said that they want to target these exploitive bosses. Tom?